What if I told you the most dangerous animals in New York City aren't the ones locked behind glass at the Bronx Zoo? They're out walking the same streets that you walk, sleeping in the same parks that you walk in, breathing the same subway air as 8 million people, and the city would rather you not think about it. The Parks Department wants you picturing picnics and jogging trails, but the wildlife biologists who spend their nights tracking these things across 78,000 acres of urban forest and wetland, well, they know better. New York City has a wild side, and it bites back. So here are 5 dangerous animals living in New York City that will absolutely ruin your afternoon, ranked from surprisingly nasty all the way to flat out terrifying. Number 5, bats. The silent flyer carrying the deadliest virus on Earth. New York has at least 9 species of insect-eating bats, and that includes little brown bats, big brown bats, and tricolor bats. These are the only animals on this whole list that can actually fly, and every single night they eat somewhere between 20 and 50% of their own body weight in bugs. That's like me putting away 70 pounds of chicken wings at a church cookout, which, I'll be honest, I've come close to it, but that's another conversation. Here's why bats earned their spot. Since 1990, 20 out of 22 human rabies cases picked up inside the United States come from bat rabies. And only one of those cases was a clear documented bite. Their teeth are so small and so sharp that they can bite you in your sleep. And you wake up the next morning with no idea that anything happened. Well, that's not a fair fight. That's getting pickpocketed by a mosquito. In 1993, Sullivan County, New York, an 11-year-old child died from a rabies bat bite. 2 years after that, in 1995, a 13-year-old from Connecticut died after running into a rabid bite in Winchester County. 2 dead children from bat rabies. Rabies has turned up in every one of New York's 9 bat species. And among the bats submitted for testing after they've been tagged or after they've been tangled with people or pets, about 3 in 100 come back positive. The reason bats get overlooked is simple. People figure rabies is a raccoon problem, and bats are just cute little things eating mosquitoes. Meanwhile, bats are the leading cause of rabies deaths in humans in this country. The New York State Health Department has been pulling out warnings about rabies bats as regularly as early as this year. So if you find a bat in your bedroom, your apartment, anywhere a person was sleeping, call the health department. Don't touch it, and don't try to be a hero. That's not bravery. That's the oil change you skip that ends up costing you the whole engine. Have you ever been walking through Central Park at dusk and you see something fluttering overhead, of course? Well, now you know what's up there with you. Now, number 4, raccoons, the trash-digging nightcrawler hauling around a virus built for its own kind. Raccoons are the most widespread wild animals in the entire state of New York. They'll live in forests and marshes and storm sewers, under your porch, well, basically anywhere there's a trash can with a loose lid. If your cousin's got a crawl space, a raccoon's already been in there. They'll set up house in tree cavities and hollowed logs and rock crevices. And they'll happily move into a burrow that some smarter animal dug and then it abandoned. Here's the part that matters though. Raccoons are the most commonly reported rabid animal in New York City. Rabies surveillance kicked off in the city back in 1992, and since then, hundreds of animals have been testing positive, most of them raccoons. There's actually a raccoon-specific variant of the rabies virus circulating up and down the entire East Coast, a version that adopted right to them. It's like a disease, filling out a job application and listing raccoons as its preferred employer. February of 2026, Midwood, Brooklyn. A sick raccoon got collected by the health department and tested positive for rabies at the New York City Public Health Laboratory. Then in March, a dog over in West Midwood ran into an unusually aggressive raccoon. That one was never caught, and they presumed it was rabid. Since January of this year, 3 rabid raccoons had turned up in the Midwood and Sheepshead Bay alone. And the health department says the virus is moving westward, deeper into Brooklyn. It's like the zombie apocalypse, but with raccoons. In 2022, 38 animals tested positive for rabies in New York City, and 30 of them were raccoons. That's about 80% of every rabid animal in the city walking around in a little bandit mask digging through your garbage. The following year, 12 animals tested positive, and 8 of those were raccoons again. Now, no human has been reported as dying from rabies in New York City since 1947. There's almost 80 years there. But it's not because the threat went anywhere. It's because the post-exposure treatment works when you actually get to it. Raccoons got a pass because they look like a chubby little burglar and people think they're adorable. Yep. There's a lot less adorable foaming at the mouth behind your building in Brooklyn though. So if you see one acting strange in the daytime, stumbling around, showing no fear of people and that kind of stuff, don't go near it. Call 311. And if you're ever left a bag of trash out on the curb overnight, congratulations, you've been running a raccoon restaurant and you didn't even know it. Number 3, coyotes. The cross-country traveler that showed up uninvited and it ain't never left. Coyotes first turned up in New York State back in the 1930s, and there are now an estimated 30,000 of them across the state, according to the Department of Environmental Conservation. Well, they live in urban forests, in suburban neighborhoods, and parkland, and they're confirmed residents of Manhattan, the Bronx, and Queens. The first modern sighting in the city happened at Van Cortlandt Park in the Bronx. And in 1998, the city put a bronze sculpture of a coyote on a boulder at the park entrance to mark the occasion. Here's the thing though, the actual coyote that inspired that proud little statue was a 29-pound female that got hit and killed on the Major Deegan Expressway. That's like building a monument to your uncle's truck and leaving out the part where, it's up on blocks in the yard. Ain't got no wheels on it. The first coyote spotted in Central Park, though, showed up in March of 1999. Then in 2019, a male, the researchers named Romeo, took up residence there. He lived alone for about 4 years. That's a weird name for Romeo, living alone for 4 years, until a female they called, of course, Juliet arrived in 2023. Chris Nagy, who co-founded the Gotham Coyote Project, thinks the pair may have been born in the Bronx and made their way to Manhattan along the train tracks running beside the Henry Hudson Parkway. Researchers have pinned down a large breeding population in the Bronx, where the big wooded parks give them room to stay hidden. The way Nagy tells it, the coyotes managed to stay under the radar there, and that's the secret to their success. In June 2026, Irvington, New York, a coyote attacked a dog on Lewis Road, and the Irvington Police Department responded and put out a village-wide advisory. That same month, Hastings-on-Hudson Police issued another one after a spike in daytime coyote activity near Maple Avenue. Daniel Bogan, a coyote researcher over at Siena College, has said this is the new normal, that coyotes are going to keep showing up in downtown New York City. Nationwide, though, only a handful of coyote bites on humans get reported in any given year, but a 40-pounder is a 40-pound predator breeding in the Bronx and strolling through Central Park isn't something you should just shrug off. If you got a small dog and you walk it at dawn or dusk anywhere near the woods in the city, you're walking it straight through a coyote's living room. Keep that list short and keep your eyes open. Most people write coyotes off because they think of them as a Western thing. Something howling at the moon out in Arizona. But these animals have been moving into the biggest cities in the country, and they're not going anywhere. And if you ever jog through Van Cortlandt Park at sunrise, odds are you've been closer to one than you'd ever guess. If you're starting to see the pattern here, well, if that's clicking, that most dangerous animals in New York City aren't the ones behind the fence, but the ones living right next to your front door, do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps channel it out a little bit and more people get to see this thing. So let's go to number 2. Number 2, the white-tailed deer. Now, the gentle-looking grazer that's been wrecking New York for decades. I see you looking at me sideways right now. Deer, dangerous, buddy? White-tailed deer have been causing havoc across New York State in ways that make the rest of this look like amateurs. They're behind thousands of vehicle collisions every single year in the state. On average, 650 people get hospitalized and 1 person is killed by animal encounters each year in New York State. Deer are a huge chunk of that number through vehicle hits alone. That's more hospitalizations than coyotes, raccoons, and bats put together. A 200-pound deer coming through your windshield at 50 miles an hour does not care that you just made your last truck payment. But it's not just a collision. Deer are the primary host for the black-legged tick, which carries Lyme disease. Research published through Columbia University found that having deer around in the urban and suburban parts of New York directly raises the risk of Lyme disease getting passed to humans. A study looking at dogs infected with the Lyme disease causing bacteria found significant exposure rates across New York City region. And where the dogs are picking it up, the people are too. Staten Island and stretches of the outer boroughs have watched their deer population swell as the animals push into more urban ground. They browse through residential gardens, strip the bark off of ornamental trees, and tear apart landscaping that people spent thousands of dollars on. That's like having a guest over for dinner and watching them eat the dining room table and the carpet instead. So if you're driving through Staten Island or Winchester or any of the greener parts of the outer boroughs at dawn or dusk, slow down. Deer are most active right at those hours. And they don't look both ways when they cross the street. A deer strike would total your vehicle faster than your brother-in-law borrowing it for the weekend. Most people overlook deer because they look peaceful and remind you of every nature documentary where nothing bad ever happened, sort of like Bambi. But I think Bambi had something bad that happened. But peaceful doesn't mean safe. And if you've ever driven the suburbs of New York at night and caught those eyes glowing back at you from the tree line, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Number 1, you knew it was coming, rats. The underground empire that outnumbers you 3 million strong. In 2023, study estimated that there are roughly 3 million rats in New York City, close to a third of the entire human population of the place. Back in 2014, a Columbia University statistician named Jonathan Albert put the figure at around 2 million. Run the same methods with the newer data, and it jumps to 3 million. The city's rats are almost all brown rats, also called Norway rats. They've been running this town longer than most families have lived in it. Although there's some families in here that's been here a long time. In 2013, the Manhattan Borough President Scott Stringer said the rats don't scurry. They walk right up to you and go, "Hey, how you doing, Mr. Borough President?" Well, that's a man describing his actual commute. Around 100 New Yorkers got bitten by rats every year, according to the health department. That's just the bites people bother to report. The real number is pretty much higher because plenty of folks get bit, wash it off, and go on about their day like it's a paper cut at work. Rat bites can pass along what they call, get this, rat bite fever. And the animals spread salmonella through contamination, here's what they call poop, which brings on nausea and diarrhea, which is called poop and fever. They also drag fleas and mites and ticks into your buildings. And every one of those carries its own set of problems. It's like inviting one bad cousin to Thanksgiving and he shows up with 4 worse ones nobody ever met. It's like my cousin Dale, my cousin Dave, my other cousin Dave, and my other cousin Dale. All right, well, back in 2020, New York City, the health department reported 14 cases of human Leptospirosis, a bacteria disease spread through rat urine. Okay, it's not poop. That was more than any previous single year on record. Now, you can go back and hit the closed captions, and you'll get that L word pop up there, and you'll know exactly what I just said. Anyway, back to it. Well, 13 of those 14 people ended up hospitalized with acute kidney and liver failure, and one person died. Between 2006 and 2020, the city documented 57 total cases of this stuff. Newer research pulling rat sighting data from 2007 to 2024 across 16 cities worldwide found that 2/3 of those cities saw their rat populations climb, and New York City ranked 4th highest on that spike. The study tied to the rise straight to warming temperatures. The city's been fighting back with an aggressive anti-rat campaign. Try to say that 5 times real quick. I said it once, I still couldn't. A trash contamination program. That's where they put all trash in one place and keep it contained. And the appointment of an actual rat czar. I wonder if he knows who them Teenage Mutant Turtles are. The health department's now piloting a rat contraceptives in the Harlem rat mitigation zone to knock down fertility in the population. Rats from that pilot should take about a year to come in. That's pretty weird. I don't know how they figured that out. I think the best way to keep them from breeding was to make them so that they can't breathe. If you live on a ground floor in the city, check your building for gaps around the pipes and utility lines, though, because a rat can squeeze through a hole the size of a quarter. You need to seal it up with some steel wool and some caulk. The reason rats get overlooked as being dangerous is because they always just been there. You step over them on the subway platforms like they're part of the furniture, but 3 million disease-carrying animals sharing your infrastructure isn't normal, it's just familiar. And if you've ever eaten in an outdoor restaurant in Manhattan, you probably had company under the table where you clocked in or you didn't. Smash that like button if this one changed how you think about the wildlife in New York City. And drop a comment below and tell me which one surprised you the most. If you haven't subscribed yet, go hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next episode of Untamed Lens.